Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. You'll have noticed the difference in the recent videos. I'm currently being called away. Therefore, you're getting glimpses of a little bit of my surrounds as a consequence of me dealing with other matters. But where I can, I'm going to continue to educate you about narcissism. You just don't have the usual thumbnails that you're used to. Instead, you can hear nature competing with me in the background. Harry's wife. Does she and will she ever understand what she is, how she behaves, and the impact that that has? Well, as you know, as a consequence of the consideration of the evidence, I've determined that Harry's wife is indeed a narcissist. And as a consequence of that means that she has, as an unaware narcissist, a hermetically sealed defense mechanism which prevents her from self-reflection. She might, of course, reflect on events and consider what might be done to improve her situation. For instance, if there was a monetary loss that was suffered. But she does not sit there and think to herself, I made a boo-boo there, or I made a mistake in relation to the treatment of that person, or that I ought to have done better with regard to that individual. Why? Well, that's accountability. It's linked to remorse. And all of those things are a threat to control. They're a fetter upon her sense of control, a shackle, a restraint, and therefore her narcissism is designed not to allow that to be the case. And accordingly, what then happens is that her narcissism rejects that. Her narcissism is designed to ensure that she is going to be in control, which means asserting control over other people and nullifying a threat to control. And if her narcissism caused her to sit and think about what she'd done to other people, what she was doing to other people, to evoke a sense of guilt, remorse, consideration, that would of course threaten control. And therefore the narcissism does not take her down that route. It serves no purpose. Furthermore, such reflection wouldn't generate any fuel for her. A narcissist might consider what their actions might do to somebody else in terms of making them angry, upset, happy. That's not self-reflection. That is the consideration of actions against another. So, for instance, Harry's wife might well think about the fact that her latest interview has put a bee in the bonnet of King Charles, for example. And in those circumstances, that would give her a dollop of thought fuel. It's not particularly strong, but it's better than nothing. It's fairly ephemeral in nature and will fade fairly quickly. That's why we prefer to have actual interactions with individuals, proximate interactions, for instance, spending time with you, talking to you, sending messages to you, speaking on the phone, because that form of proximate fuel is far stronger and much better for our purposes. So accordingly, with Harry's wife, she does not sit there in her room thinking back over what she's done. She does not form any sense of regret. She does not think to herself, I was once in a brilliant position. I married into the royal family, they welcomed me, they treated me well, and now I've been acting like a complete doofus and I've messed it up. Her narcissism just doesn't take her down that route, which of course is somewhat surprising for many of you. You would think surely she would recognise that she's made repeated mistakes. No. The way that her brain is effectively wired is it just doesn't process that. It doesn't allow the contemplation of a mistake. It doesn't allow her to think to herself, I've messed up there, because that amounts to a threat to control. Instead, it drives her to consider that she's a victim. So, for instance, much of the time, there isn't any actual reflection of events because it doesn't serve any purpose. But if, for instance, someone was to say to her, look, you had the world at your feet. You were a D-list cable actress. You married a prince of the realm. You had over £30 million spent on your wedding. The British public welcomed you. You were in the ascendancy. All you had to do was keep your mouth shut, smile and wave, and you would have a life of luxury and adoration. All you needed to do was embrace the service like the other royals had. You messed it up. You made yourself vilified. You have caused many people to dislike you, some to even hate you. Your money is running out. Many people deem you an irrelevancy, Other people are astonished at your lack of self-control. Do you not see this, and do you not regret it? And if someone were to explain all of that to her, her narcissism would step in effect, and not cause her to go, yes, I have messed up and I take complete accountability. It would either cause her to say, actually, I haven't messed up. It's other people that have caused the problem for me. I haven't done anything wrong. It might be that it would invariably cause her to move to that victim mentality of blaming other people. It would have been all right if the people hadn't been racist towards me. It would have been all right if the press hadn't been calling my children the N-word. It might have been all right if the royal family had played fair with me rather than speculating about the colour of my child. And it might have been all right if the royal family had ensured that I could keep my passport and so on and so forth. She is incapable of seeing that she is the root cause of her own problems. The narcissism is very effective in that respect. She is incapable of recognising that she is the one that has brought these problems onto herself. It's either simply not her fault altogether, so there's denial, or if you were to present some cogent evidence towards her, her narcissism in effect recognises that would break through the denial, and therefore the denial isn't going to continue to work to nullify the threat to control. And therefore, instead, what it does is it shifts to an alternative form of manipulation, which would be, for instance, a word salad, or a circular conversation, or it might involve her typically blame shifting. It wasn't me that did that, it was somebody else. Pearl didn't work because they didn't provide me with the right support. Archetypes wasn't as popular as it should have been. Spotify didn't market it properly. And it was a consequence of the racist press getting him first and lampooning it. She is incapable of sitting there and looking at herself in the mirror and thinking, you're the one that caused all of this. You're the one that generated all of these problems. Take accountability. Because to do so would threaten the very core of her existence by way of that threat to control. I know many of you find it extraordinary that she's incapable of seeing this, that you can see the problems that she's caused and it's resulted from her own behaviour, that you can see the ongoing shitstorms that occur, the alienation of the A-list from her, the increasing desperation of public appearances, the speculation that her marriage is over and some form of separation is in place, and that you can see this downward spiral. She cannot. She recognises that there are problems there. She's not the type of narcissist that's utterly blind to that. As a mid-range narcissist, she can see that there are problems, but it's always somebody else's fault. She didn't cause it. She didn't create it. It was caused by other people or something else. Whether it's the weather, the man in the moon, or more typically the behaviour of other people, the narcissist will always deflect and blame shift elsewhere. She is not allowed to accept that. If you were to sit her down in an interview and put to her all of the various allegations, evidence of the contradictions and lies, she would not sit there in some kind of Perry Mason moment and on the witness stand and go, I confess, I did it all, you've got me. She would invariably deflect, deny, turn on the waterworks, accuse you of haranguing her, outright lie and say those things didn't happen, you've concocted the evidence, this is a smear campaign against me, dole out the pity plays, and ultimately, if the interview continued, she would eventually dissolve in a heap of tears or storm off, withdrawing from the threat to control and thus nullifying it. You've seen this many instances where certain narcissists have been interviewed and say, I'm not standing for this Mickey Mouse bullshit. They pull off the mic and walk away. Of course, she wouldn't consent to such an interview in the first place. Her narcissism would see the interview itself as a threat to control. She would want to know what the questions were. She'd want to control the narrative. As you note, all of the interviews that she's done are soft soap supine ones. That's her narcissism at work, ensuring that nobody's going to ask her the key questions. And her advisors, and also her narcissism, is never going to allow her to put herself in that position of being interviewed and scrutinised. That cannot happen. The narcissism just will not allow it to occur because of the threat to control that will be caused. So ultimately, there will never be any self-reflection by her. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.